Me and my fellow elders, all elders that I know of in every church, all elders that I know of in every church have been having deeper conversations with each other about the fundamental nature of the church and its mission than probably any time in the past. Any time in the past. As a result, I think, I just don't think we can ever go back to where we were. For me, this will be a new, vitally important aspect of what I think about the function of the church, the mission of the church, the relation of the church to the world, the relation of the church to the worship of God, to worship itself. Look, I've got to be very careful what I say here, because I'm speaking into an explosive atmosphere. There's a tremendous amount of volatile fumes, and I do not want to, I don't think it would be appropriate at this time to explode them. I've literally been thinking over the past couple of days, should I put a reminder in my calendar? Should it be 6 months, 8 months, a year, to finally have the full conversation? I don't know, because as I'm thinking about this, I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation. This is going to be something that goes up and down, up and down. So it's going to be part of the new norm. And so at some point you really have to dig into all of it. But right now, I just think there are too many people, even in this audience, who are, well, my fellow Trekkies will appreciate this, emotionally compromised. Emotionally compromised. Fear has so taken over that nothing I say will be either relevant to you or interpreted in any fair fashion at all. At all. So I need to only partially answer this question right now. I said yesterday on the program, and I said in Twitter, Hebrews 10:25 is not talking about this situation. I'm sorry. If you think it is, I just don't know where you're getting that. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So there's your section, there's your sentence. It is meant to be an exhortation in light of difficult circumstances. We can use that. We need to hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. Why can we do that? Because he who promised is faithful. And so we're not trusting in our own accomplishment. We're trusting in his faithfulness. As a result, we should consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds. I am seeing some of that. I would love to see more of that. One of the contests right now in that thing on Twitter is between two dear brothers of mine, dear friends of mine. One I know a whole lot better than the other, but I consider them both dear brothers and fellow laborers, both of whom I have disagreements with. Michael Brown, Dan Wallace. So I wrote something about it today. And what I wrote about it was to build both of them up. To say to the world, man, Dan Wallace has been just such a tremendous servant for us all, and we've learned so much from him. And you know, I've known Dan since the Ankerberg show. That's when we met, 95. Some of you weren't born in 95. I've known him for a while, and it's not like we call each other up and chat all the time. But Dan will tell you, there was a time I was there for him. I won't go into it. I'm not looking for pats in the back, but there was a time I was there for him. We still talk about that once in a while. He's been a tremendous help to me as a resource in textual criticism. And you know that I love Michael Brown. You've seen the debates we've done with each other and against each other. And what I did is I tried to build them both up. And I had voted for one over the other. I had to make a choice. But I wanted to build them both up and tried to. And I hope they saw that. I know Michael did. Dan's not the social media maven. Michael has his radio program, so he's much more out there. The point is, let us consider how to stimulate one another's love and good deeds. We don't do that very well in social media. Might be time to really reconsider that, especially if we're going to be spending a whole lot more time on it, because it's the only way we can communicate with people. But that's the context of not forsaking your own assembling together. So the assumption is the assembling together is taking place, but there are some who are in the habit of not coming to the regular assembly of the church. This isn't talking about how often the church should assemble. This isn't talking about whether the church should assemble because of the ease of transmission of COVID-19 or the plagues that would be coming upon the church within the next centuries, historically speaking. The plague Justinian, and which may have been the plague itself. We're not 100% certain. We just don't know. We didn't have doctors back then that could make the kind of observations we can do today. Anyways, it is saying that there were people who have a habit of separating themselves away from their fellow Christians, and we're not to do that. We are how can you stimulate one another to love and good deeds if you're not in the body? That's the issue. We are to instead encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Now, if you want to try to create an argument from that says this should be the guiding principle as to whether the church must meet on a weekly basis, face to face, even in the midst. And let's not use, because this gets into arguments about just how bad this stuff really is and how many people really die from it and all the rest of that kind of stuff. Right now, you can't even talk about that. Not even allowed to in our society right now. You can't. Let's leave that off to the side. What if you were a part of a faithful church in 1349? And if you don't know that date, you really should. I should just be able to sit here and go, just think of 1347 to 1351. And if you listen to this program, I'm going to make sure you know those dates. Sort of like 325. You do know that one, don't you? Yeah. Council of Nicaea. 1347, 1351. The Great Mortality. We call today the Black Death. The Black Plague. They didn't call it that. Nobody called it that back then. The reason it's called the Black Death is because one form of the plague caused these massive black bulbs to develop under your armpits and your groin. Oof, bad stuff, okay? There was another form that was breathed in, and that killed you in 24 hours. 24 hours, you're dead. Mortality rate, 100%. There were no records, to my knowledge, there were no records of anyone who got that form who ever lived. 100% mortality. The other form was about 85 to 90% mortality. Okay? So we're talking wipes out half the population of Europe in a matter of years. And then goes away and then bops back a couple decades later, and then it just keeps going. It's incredible how long that lasted. So the question is, what about 1349? Would Hebrews 10:25 have said, yep, You all got to get together. Now, they didn't know what caused it. And so they did get together. And one of the main groups that died were all the priests. Interestingly enough, the Pope at the time, and this was during the schism, so you had different popes. The Pope had a doctor. And the doctor said what he needed to do was to stay in a room with 2 huge fires at each end of the room. That would produce a lot of smoke, but somehow they handled that. I'm not sure what. He did survive. And when you think about it, that probably wasn't, I don't think the doctor had any idea why that would work. But a lot of stuff that was tried, there was a lot of stuff that was tried that just killed people instantly. But a couple of things that were tried actually worked for reasons that they had no idea why it was. But if it was passed primarily by fleas, those fires would probably keep the fleas away. What are you doing with that microphone? It's driving me crazy. When you raise it, you're trying to talk about something. So anyway, would you meet in 1349? Would Hebrews 10:25 have that meaning in 1349? Today, we have technology. So all these different factors, what's the state up to? What's the state's authority? What's our requirement to show love to our neighbor? Will our meeting bring death? And again, remember yesterday? One of the reasons I showed the mortality thing? We've already made the decision that our meeting is worth the risk of a certain level of death. You've already made that decision. Every one of you who's ever gone to church has already made that decision. What do I mean? You get into a vehicle. You could kill somebody, an unbeliever, on the way to church. You've decided that that risk is low enough. It's still a risk, but it's low enough. Where is the risk? Why have we been given so much contradictory information? What information can we trust? This is why I said I'm so disappointed that the people on the one side that say we must get together, we must meet, this is it's not just something that we can put off. This is talking about a couple days ago. There were some people over here, not all, but there were some launching nuclear missiles at the people who didn't meet. You're just a bunch of compromisers. You're bowing the knee to Satan, well, Caesar, Satan, whatever, Satan's representative, Caesar, whatever, launching nuclear missiles this way. Right now, the vast majority of the nuclear missiles are coming from this side. If you dare meet, you are an idiot. You are risking your own people because, people are dying in the streets all around us. Well, they're not, but it's going to happen. And so you've got the two sides doing this stuff. What needs to be done is that the elders of each congregation have to assess the information as best they can as a group in light of their commitment to how important public worship and the ordinances is, and how regular that must be. Now, you have standard New Testament revelation of meeting on the Lord's Day. Okay, that's your standard. That's the norm. If meeting in 1349, or let's say meeting in certain war situations where because of bombardment you are greatly increasing the chances of your people's death by all getting in one place. Can you put off that meeting in light of bombardment? Most people, I think, would say yes. So it's all a matter of weighing the information. And right now, it does, I get the feeling that there is a consensus being created by something outside of theological considerations. That's coming from one particular side. We'll see. But the elders of a congregation have to make that call. And if you're not a part of that congregation, I don't think it's any of your business. Pray for them. We're going to have plenty of time in the future to talk about how the relationship between the state and the church has been changed in 2020. We'll have plenty of time to talk about it. Or will we? We may be talking about it in hushed tones over a cup of coffee in the corner of a restaurant with our phones turned off and hidden in a lead box. Because Israel just today passed a law allowing tech companies to use the location of your phone to track coronavirus exposure. I don't know why it's not hepatitis and meningitis and H1N1 or anything. I don't know why this is the one thing. I don't know why when people say there could be 500,000 deaths from this. Okay? There's 2.8 million in the United States each year. There's never any context. There's never... I don't know why, but it's the first time we've ever seen this to where it is reported in numerous mainstream sources that Google, Facebook, all these tech companies are working with governments, and Israel's come out and said, we're going to do this. We're going to track your phone, and then we're going to use algorithms to find out where you've been and if you've run into somebody else, and then we're going to get you. Because if we find out they have it, then we're going to drag you in and we're going to test you. And that's how we're going to get rid of this thing. See? Why don't you do that with AIDS? Oh, I shouldn't have asked that question. See, I mean, there's just so much going on here that it just makes you go, wow, going down the road here. What's gonna? Don't know what's gonna go on here. So, and now I give you Rich Pierce.
My turn. It occurred to me this morning, and I actually had been thinking about it on and off the past few days. One of my elders in my church has shut everything down except for the worship service.
Mm-hmm.
The church will open 10 minutes before the service starts and close 10 minutes after.
Okay.
And that's,
so no fellowship afterwards or before.
No small groups, no nothing beyond that. But one of my elders talks regularly about the fact that he has high blood pressure. And I've been thinking about the anxiety that this causes. And I think that may actually be the bigger threat at this moment. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know what next week's going to bring. But the anxiety of this is causing people, Christians, believers, a great deal of trouble, I think.
There's no question about that.
And I was reminded, frankly, I was reminded of the men's Wednesday night meeting, prayer meeting at PRBC, in so many different ways in which the men prayed there,
and
talking
I'm sure
about the God of all comfort,
mm-hmm.
the God of all hope. And believers, if we should model anything right now, it should be to a world that is frantic, that is in panic, that we know the God of all comfort, and that we rely on the God of all comfort, and that they can know the God of all comfort. This should be part of our prayer. We should be turning to the God of all comfort. We should be pleading for comfort, mercy, healing, all of those things. But ultimately, the taming of the anxiety, when Jesus said, be anxious for nothing, when you rely on God, when you turn to God, when your hope is truly in God and you know Him, despite all of these terrible things, the anxiety should be quelled by all of that.
That was Jeff's text on Sunday. And the irony was, Jeff started preaching. I was about 3 rows back. And right then, the thing from the governor came out. You sent it to me. Yeah, you sent it to me during church. Thank you. And so I go out the side and I meet with Luke and Zach. There's no way to, I'm not going to interrupt Jeff. But, that stuff's going on while he's preaching from Philippians about being anxious for nothing.
Right.
And so, yeah, you ruined the sermon for me. So I just thought I'd let you know. No, it's seriously difficult to do because as soon as he got done and we're about to do the Lord's Supper and we're doing it differently because of this.
You know this.
We've got hand sanitizer and all the rest of this stuff going on, and we've separated the bread out and at a church you and I both know, how do they do the bread?
Yeah.
First time they've ever done that differently.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Pre-broken.
Yeah.
We're setting up, and I'm showing Jeff the article.
Yeah.
What are we going to say now?
Yeah.
So, stress is,
Now, I will say this, and I think part of why we're seeing what we're seeing has to do with the messaging.
Oh, there's...
I actually, I told you a week ago or so, I was very skeptical of this being overblown. Then I saw the rationale of the approach and the way in which they want to attack it. Okay, I get that.
Gotta be careful. There's stuff you can't say right now.
But the messaging really could have, and I'm going to quote a rank liberal, okay? And that I sent that same message to my pastor, and he started digging into it. Is this an edict? What is this? What exactly is he saying to us that we're allowed to do? Because he can't do that.
Oh, I know.
And he then sent me a message back from the mayor of Los Angeles, and he said, look at this. This is how we need to interpret this.
Well, and the governor in California said the same thing. We can't force you to do it.
And this is about messaging. My Reader's Digest version is, look, we can't order you to do this. We don't have that authority, but we're asking you to.
Yet.
Well,
I think if martial law was proclaimed, then they would.
But to my knowledge, martial law has never actually happened in this country.
I don't know.
At least not in...
Are you telling me that seeing the panic that you and I are seeing right now, that couldn't happen?
Yeah, but it might be for a very different reason.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're back to the anxiety factor.
But we're getting into stuff we can't talk about.
Sorry. But ultimately, if we digest this in a way in which, like, for instance, the mayor of Los Angeles put it, hat in hand, rather than the iron fist inside the velvet glove, if the government comes to us with hat in hand, how would we respond as opposed to interpreting them iron fist in the velvet glove? We need to ask ourselves those questions, I think.
Oh, I agree.